ดีค่ะ Welcome to be my guest. I'm Cholapansa Narula. Thank you very much for joining us in today's episode. And as the tourism business grows, with predictions of the number of international tourist arrivals reaching 1.8 billion globally by the year 2030, a number of sustainable awareness campaigns have been seen. So today in this episode, we'll be speaking with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council CEO, Mr. Randy Durand, to see how it's working with the Thai government in order to achieve sustainable tourism best practices. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
Mr. Randy, thank you very much for joining us. So to start, tell us a bit about the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. What are your visions and missions?
Well, we're an NGO that was created by the United Nations system, by UNWTO, the tourism organization at UN, and the Environment Organization, UN Environment, to create global baseline standards for sustainability in travel and tourism. So first and foremost, the GSTC criteria serve as a global, like I say, baseline set of standards, as a guide for anyone, any practitioner working in tourism, whether it's private sector or public sector. So that's the basis of our work, is we're the keepers of those standards, and then we revise them according to international procedures for developing and revising standards. There's two sets, one for the public sector and one for the private sector. And then beyond that, we perform other services where we serve as an accreditation scheme for certification bodies that certify businesses and destinations as sustainable. Mm-hmm. So that involves this big technical framework of accreditation. And then along with that, we have a number of programs, including training, which we'll talk about because of what's happening with DASTA here in Thailand, doing a Thai version of our training.
I see. We see global campaigns promoting sustainable tourism on the rise, and in 2017, the UN announced it as the International Year of Sustainable Tourism. From that, can you explain to us what are the main pillars of responsible tourism and why does it matter?
Well, it matters because the Earth is in peril, and so I think that all human activity needs to be more sustainable. So all organizations, all sectors, all individuals, we're using 1.6 worth of Earth resources. That can't continue because populations are going to continue to grow. So everything we do has to be sustainable. So tourism has to play its part just like every other human endeavor. And what's happened in travel and tourism is that there's been this tremendous awareness recently that tourism just cannot grow in an uncontrolled way. It needs proper management, and typically governments around the world have put most of their resources into promotion, but there's been a new awareness in recent years that we need to manage better, we need to manage to save beaches, to save the earth, the first part of your question about what are the pillars of sustainability or responsible. By the way, we use the terms responsible or sustainable interchangeably. Our standards, the GSTC criteria, are based on four pillars. Obviously, environment is a big piece of it, but we also insist upon sustainability in travel and tourism, include social issues and include cultural issues. On the cultural side, there's two elements to that: respect for living culture and preservation of cultural heritage. And the fourth pillar is sustainable management. And the social side includes economic. We want businesses to thrive, we want destinations to thrive. That's sustainable, is to be economically viable. So we never like to talk purely about just limitations or restrictions. It's how do we manage better to keep getting the benefits of economic development through tourism. So it's not just about limits. It's about doing more good and doing less harm in tourism. That to us is sustainable tourism.
Now, following international efforts to promote best practices, what are the current trends and the level of interest by those in the industry, the stakeholders, to actually achieve the goal? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we suffer from a lack of awareness of the great breadth of sustainability, of what needs to be done. There's some current trends and some current hot topics. The world is now suddenly talking about over-tourism, largely because the last two summers in Europe and some media capitals, there's been an awareness of just overcrowding in places. And here in Asia, we see with the rise of the Chinese traveler. Well, the Chinese traveler is going everywhere in the world, but we're seeing it everywhere that certain famous, iconic places are just very crowded.
I remember Venice.
Venice is the poster child globally of this. In Barcelona, there have been citizens' protests. Amsterdam, there's, so some European cities, but, you look at how crowded the Grand Palace of Bangkok is, or Angkor Wat, and I mean, a lot of iconic places suffer from, they need good management to make sure that the cultural heritage or the natural heritage is not damaged. So over-tourism is a new term that we didn't hear of 5 years ago that everybody's talking about globally in tourism for the last year or two. Another trend is that there's much greater societal awareness today than ever that our oceans are filling with plastic and we're all eating plastic, so we have to do things about plastic. So this is, suddenly we're talking about not using plastic straws, and many of us have been for years trying to figure out how to reduce single-use plastic water bottles in travel and tourism. These are not tourism issues. These are global issues that affect quality of life for all of us. But that sort of, entered the discussion on tourism as the issues of plastics. Other trends are we have to be very careful with wildlife protection. Biodiversity is decreasing. There's some very interesting and controversial discussions in Thailand right now about elephant care and elephant riding. And these issues need to be sorted out. There are many foreigners who think that elephant riding is inherently bad, where I think the issue is much more complex than that. The greater issue is proper elephant care, not whether somebody gets on the animal or not. These are complex issues, but sometimes an overly simplistic answer prevails in social media or whatever. And then, just sort of environmental degradation of beaches. The fact that a few Thai beaches in the south have been closed to kind of rest them, which is a fabulous development. Famously, the island of Boracay in the Philippines
as well.
Completely shut down. And so this is, in a sense, a good step, but what's frustrating and sad in a way is that we got to that point before we needed to close a beach down. Maybe if we'd started managing it better 5 or 10 years ago or longer ago, it wouldn't have needed to be closed down yesterday. So this is where we really need a lot of improvement, is that and it's happening now. There's more awareness in the world that tourism requires management. Societies and governments around the world haven't known that in the past. And suddenly there's this great awakening that we have to manage destinations. And if we manage them right, sustainably, then we don't have to close them down when we've damaged them.
Obviously, apart from working with the stakeholders, industry players, you're also working to change the mindset of travelers. We'll have a look at that when our program returns. Stay with us. Welcome back to Be My Guest. We are still with Mr. Randy Duran, the CEO of GSTC. You're here in Bangkok to collaborate with DASTA, Designated Areas for Sustainable Tourism Administration. Tell us a bit about the partnership.
Well, we've been working with DASTA for a few years on a number of levels. We've done some assessments of some of the destinations that they're working at in terms of the sustainability policies and practices. Really, kind of the most important element of the relationship right now is that we've taken our class, our training program, Sustainable Tourism Training Program, which we have on a global basis, and DASTA has become our partner for Thailand, where they've translated our curriculum into the Thai language. We worked together to select a team of Thai trainers and conducted training of those trainers, and now they're ready to go forth and teach stakeholders throughout Thailand on the broad range of concepts of sustainable tourism. We're very excited about that. So we have a number of other things going on, but those are a couple of the bigger pieces.
And Thailand actually has its own, the standards.
Standards, yes.
Which is actually recognized by your council.
Yes.
What are these standards, by the way?
Yeah, so there are two sets of standards. There's CBT, Community-Based Tourism Standards, that DASTA owns, and Sustainable Tourism Management Standards. And in both cases, in the past year, we've gone through the process where our technical people have put a formal stamp to ensure and share with the world that both of those sets of standards, they're Thai standards, but they include our baseline global standards. And so that's very important because then these standards, which again have national context, also adhere to these universal principles. So this is what we call GSTC recognition, to put a formal mark on a set of standards, the words in a document to show that they include these universal principles.
So if they're recognized by GSTC, does it share the same criteria that you mentioned earlier, the destination criteria and the hotel or industry criteria?
Yes, the GSTC recognition means that they include one of those two sets of standards that are inherent inside those standards.
So today we saw a number of areas across the country receiving a certificate that's called CBT integrated. How will this help the communities in actually achieving sustainable tourism development?
Well, by having these leaders from those communities have this certificate, I should say have this training and this awareness, that makes them better leaders in making tourism truly community-based, because that process includes training on how to have public participation throughout the process, how to manage sustainably, how to engage all the various stakeholders. Too often tourism is just a few stakeholders that are making most of the decisions. And inherent in our process and our standards includes public participation, includes a broad set of stakeholders having a voice in development. Because tourism should be for the community, the full community, not just a few people who may own a few elements of, a few of the businesses or whatever. That creates a platform where you can have successful tourism in the long term.
Now, apart from working with communities, with business operators, travelers, how are you working on actually changing the mindset, the perception of travelers to be responsible while traveling? Is that a difficult task?
Oh, it's a very difficult task, and that would require far more reach and money than we have just to create that kind of awareness campaign. But it is a real issue right now because globally we're seeing an amazing surge in demand, led by the Chinese outbound traveler, but many more. I mean, Indonesia, India, many Asian economies, middle class has been growing. Thai middle class is traveling internationally more today than it ever did. So it's a global phenomenon, it's an Asian phenomenon. So yes, we have a lot of demand, and that means that we have so many new travelers today that aren't experienced travelers. And so all of that will get better over time. As those travelers visit many different places, they'll get better at traveling. But it is clearly a challenge for us today, is that when you have so many hundreds of millions of first-time travelers that have never stepped out of the context of their own community, their own culture, and now they're traveling internationally, of course that creates some problems. But there's no easy solutions to that. That really requires a lot of awareness campaigning from the home country on helping people understand and giving them some guidance on how to, if not behave in each given place they visit, at least try to be a little bit more respectful and quiet.
And quiet,
when in doubt.
But then again, there's another group of travelers who are very green conscious these days. Are these groups supporting companies that embody these values, in return creating more business opportunities for companies that are actually going through sustainable tourism development?
Yeah, well, the market research shows that in all source markets everywhere in the world, the traveler is increasingly concerned on green and social justice issues and sustainable and responsible travel issues. So that's the good news. There's an increase in awareness. However, I think we have to admit to ourselves that it's still a soft demand that for sustainable travel, that most of us still, when we book a trip, we're really looking for low price, what's the destination that seems appropriate for me. We're not seeking out. Some people are. That's starting to rise a little bit. But what we are seeing in very large measure is that once somebody's booked and once they get to a place, they are more and more expecting that the place and the business, the destination and the businesses are being managed sustainably. And when they see something they don't like, they're becoming more and more vocal. So we're weak on the front end at the point of purchase, but but it's growing. but it's strong in the back end of once I get to a place. Why are you using all this plastic, or why, what are you doing about this and social justice issues and so forth. So the awareness is all going up, but that's sort of a slow build also.
For travelers who have this green conscience, what's the way to actually find that if a destination or if a hotel is really going through sustainable practices? Is there an indicator?
It's not easy. I mean, they really have to do some research and ask questions. Our organization, one of our missions is that through our process of accrediting certification bodies, we're just now beginning to build a framework of recognition, not with any goal anytime soon to reach the consumer on eco labeling, but to label supply chain development so that a tour operator that selects more hotels that are certified as sustainable, they can put that into their marketing message that, we've got a greener supply chain. So that's in its infancy. I mean, that's just in recent years we've been building that up. But now we're starting to get that come to scale in the world. As we do that, we're going to start creating indexing where the consumer, the traveler, can find that sort of information. But we're kind of starting with more of a B2B approach of trying to get indexes for businesses. There's some very progressive companies in the world that are looking for that. So that's relatively new. And so now we need to get that word out that businesses now have the ability to find those suppliers, whether it's a hotel, a transport provider, different components that go into travel packages. That's rather new and growing.
To date, how many hotels have received the GSTC standards?
It's just a few thousand in the world, so it's a relatively small number. But because we only launched accreditation in the last couple of years. So there's many fine certification programs in the world that have certified hotels that's not formally, in that, but a number of prominent international certification bodies are in the process of getting accredited by us. So we'll see those numbers increase, and we'll start seeing bigger and better directories of hotels that are certified.
All right, Mr. Randy, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
สวัสดีค่ะ
You're very welcome.
Welcome back to the program. We're now with DASTA to see the strategies in promoting sustainable tourism development in Thailand. And joining us now is the Deputy Director General of DASTA, Dr. Chuwit Mitchop. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
Dr. Chuwit, how successful has DASTA been in promoting sustainable tourism development in the country?
Okay, let me start with the term sustainability. When talking about the sustainable tourism or sustainability, we cannot measure sustainability with personal feeling or intuition or emotion, but we have to rely systematically on something which at DASTA we rely on the so-called GSTC, standing for Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria.
I see.
Belongs to the Global Sustainable Tourism Council that allows us to implement the sustainable tourism development in a systematic way. In the past 15 years, growing with DASTA and working along with the stakeholders in the designated areas for sustainable tourism, we have to accept that many things have to be improved. But having said that, however, we have seen a lot of signals to encourage us for the next step about adopting the GSTC, not only in the previous 6 designated areas ranging from เกาะช้าง พัทยา สุโขทัย ศรีสัชนาลัย กำแพงเพชร historical parks, เลย น่าน and อู่ทอง ancient city, but we have been invited by the Ministry of Tourism and Sports. Although we belong to the Office of the Prime Minister, not the Ministry of Tourism and Sports, but we have been invited by the ministry to help them drive the so-called tourism clusters. Thailand has now 9 tourism clusters, of which each cluster has about 4-5 provinces. For example, the Lana tourism cluster in the northern part of Thailand, comprising Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, Lamphun, Lampang, and Phayao. We will for sure, do promoting the GSTC criteria in the specific areas assigned by the tourism cluster committee. So we can say that along the experience learned from the GSTC, as Mr. Randy Reban has said that we are a good partner with GSTC. We will work, shoulder to shoulder with the brothers and sister universities that we have signed the MOU today to expand, the knowledge and the expertise about our work in terms of promoting sustainable tourism concept out of the designated areas into the bigger picture of tourism clusters. So, if asked, we have been successful. It is a long journey.
But of course, success is actually awaiting us as we see that a lot of sectors are coming together at the national level, international level, and today, as you mentioned, that an MOU has been signed with 19 universities in every region across the country. So how will the universities actually come into play now to promote responsible tourism?
So after signing the MOU today, we will, chop around, with the universities who have signed the MOU today to set up the so-called action plans. So we will go down to details about the next 3 years, 5 years, depending on the readiness and willingness of the universities. We will discuss with them. Of course, we have just recently established the so-called DASTA Academy. This will be the mechanism to work closely with the universities who have signed the MOU today, and we will create a number or stocks of the courses, the training courses, or even the seminars or conferences to be organized jointly between the university and DASTA to expand the umbrella knowledge of GSTC, Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria. Having said that, allow me to explain a little bit about the structure of criteria. The criteria of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council has 41 indicators, and we don't need to go all 41 indicators. We can select 1, 2, 3 indicators to work with each university. For example, how to manage about the safety for the tourists in the designated areas, in the tourist attractions, things like that, or how we promote the roles of the community to get involved with the benefits to be fairly diversified to them, things like that.
So how are you actually working with communities? Because obviously with the initiatives led by the government, that is to promote wealth, distribution of income at the community level, and to conserve, protect natural resources. In terms of the communities being involved, how are you working with them?
Yeah, I think to make the community, work in a systematic way, we have to set up the so-called club, CBD club, to allow them, to manage the tourism by themselves. So they have to select, chairman of the club, who will be the treasurer, things like that, who will do the accounting, the marketing. So we will provide some seed money to them, but not too much, because if we treat them with the money forever, we cannot find the term sustainability. So we will treat them at the initial stage, to get them going by themselves. Treat them with the body of knowledge about the sustainable tourism development. Although we are proud that all model community-based tourism clubs under our supervision have been given the GSTC recognized. But having said that, not only the DASTA to work shoulder to shoulder with the communities, we have to attract the intention and also the interest from the stakeholders, including the private sector, other government agencies, universities for sure, and then the civil societies to come. And nowadays we have heard about the term gift economy. So go beyond the limitation of budget provided each year. Of course, when talking about the financial budget, all government agencies would face the limit of the budget granted each year. So we have to attract, the sponsorship from the big companies who have the green hearts, would like to shift from, growing mangrove, every year to promote the strength, the roles of the communities. So we will give we will use the gift economy as a tool to go beyond the limit of the budget.
And of course, that is one of the effective ways in order to support the communities and in turn support sustainable tourism. Dr. Chu Wit, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you
สวัสดี
very
ค่ะ
much. สวัสดีครับ
DASTA is committed to ensure that sustainable tourism best practices are implemented through GSTC standards in the hope of seeing sustainable development in Thailand in the long term. And that's it for today's edition of Be My Guest. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Chalapansa Narula. See you next time. สวัสดีค่ะ